Hi, my name is Bruce Aiken. I was a pilot with the Royal Canadian Air Force for about 21 years. I served as a tactical helicopter pilot for most of my career, flying the Griffin, supporting the Army. And then I spent a little bit of time later on in my career as a flight instructor, passing on what I learned to the next generation. I'm here to talk a little bit about Remembrance Day and what it means to a veteran. When you sit down and you think about it, a lot of it is about service. It's about people who are willing to stand up and put their lives on the line, put their lives on hold, put their families second to serving the country. A lot of people, in this day and age, don't think about the collective good before themselves, and that's one thing that I think sets apart people who have served from your average person in Canada. It's about selflessness. It's about putting, the needs of the country, the needs of other people, the needs of people in need ahead of yourself. You go out, you go to places that aren't particularly nice, and the people there aren't particularly friendly, and you're there to make sure that you're doing good and you're helping the world and trying to make it a better place. Part of it's about courage. It's about going and doing jobs that are hard and sometimes scary. And even though deep down in your gut, there's a chance that you probably could be killed, you pick your socks up and you kind of carry on and you get it done because the rest of the guys and girls on your team they're depending on you. If you don't do your job, then they can't do their job. It's about sacrifice. It's about being willing to put your life on the line. It's about being willing to die for something that you believe in, even though other people may not agree or think it's a worthwhile cause. So on Remembrance Day, I like to take the time to reflect. I like to think about, the men and the women that I've served with, and how awesome they were. Couldn't imagine a better group of people. I like to think about the people who came before us, who served in the First and Second World War in Korea, and all the other conflicts that came up and went, and how they've helped to change the world, how they helped to shape the world into what it is today and give us the freedom that we enjoy every single day. I also think, as an aircrewman, there's a lot of people who died along the way, not necessarily in combat, but also in training. Actually, I think we've probably killed more people in training than we did in combat. And that's just part of the service and part of the sacrifice you make as an airman doing a bit of a risky job. I always also find a little bit of mixed feelings come with a Remembrance Day. I always feel a little bit of pride in my service and what I've done for this country. But I also feel that, you could have always done more. And I think that's where a lot of veterans struggle, is thinking about how they could have done more, how they could have saved their buddy, how they could have done more to help the people in the countries that they were serving. But the reality is you can only do so much. You have to accept that as part of your sacrifice and your service. So that's kind of all I have. Just like to wish a happy and thoughtful Remembrance Day to all the veterans and all the people who have served before us.
Welcome to the Shaun Newman podcast. I am sitting across from Mr. Si Campbell. I've had this one marked on the old calendar now for a few months. I've been talking with a few of the young boys, as you put it, who you golf with. They've approached me, and so we're just going to go down memory lane with you and have a little fun today, okay?
Okay, yep.
So you were born in 1924.
Yeah, in Zealandia, Saskatchewan, out on a farm, yeah. Born in a raging lightning storm and a rainstorm and a a doctor by the name of Thomas H. Cuddy came all the way out there on a horse and buggy in that storm to bring me into the world. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So what happens if he doesn't arrive?
I don't know.
They just figure a way of getting you out.
I guess, yeah. So it must, it mustn't have been the easiest. My mom had been down to Mayo Clinic twice, and she passed away a year and a half after I was born. Yeah.
Holy crap.
With cancer, yeah. I was the youngest of 5, yeah.
So you had no mom then growing up?
Nope. My grandmother, my dad's mom and dad came up from Rollo, Saskatchewan, up to Roatstown in Zealandia, and she raised us kids. Yeah. She was 68 years old, and my granddad was 75 when they came up, and she looked after us kids. Otherwise, Dad would have probably had to put us up for adoption, and that's the reason she came up. My granddad and my grandmother, they farmed down in Iowa, and so they sold out down there, and they bought land right across the railroad track at the little town of Rollo, Saskatchewan, and lost it to an unscrupulous land dealer. So they didn't have any money either, and when my dad got back the second time, my mom was down in Mayo Clinic. He didn't have 5 cents left in the bank and no land either. They lost his farm to pay for that, my mom being down in Mayo Clinic. Yeah.
So your grandparents then originally come from the United States?
Oh yeah, yeah. My dad's side of the family came from the States. My mom, she came from Bowmanville, Ontario, and they moved out west to farm. Yeah.
So we got a couple thoughts rolling through my brain already. So let's go back to the night you're born. So what was the closest hospital to your guys' farm then?
Roatstown.
Would be Roatstown.
Would be probably let me think. Probably 15 miles. Yeah.
By horse and buggy.
Probably, yeah. That's about it.
Holy man, yeah, it comes to mind because I was just saying to you off air, I'm expecting our 3rd here in October, and a guy seems to forget how easy it is to drive the 2 minutes in a vehicle, warm, no matter if it's ice cold outside, raining, thundering, it don't matter. The hospital's sitting right there for you.
Yeah. It was an amazing thing that he did that, really. Boy, it's something.
That's almost risking your life.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for darn sure. Yeah, and he was retired when I got a hold of him. He was retired and living in Winnipeg when I got a hold of him when I got on the railroad in 1948 there. I had to prove my age. I had what they called a delayed birth certificate. I was being as his mom was sick, that time. Well, they never thought of having me baptized or even registering me for a birth certificate. Yeah, in those days. So, yeah, I went overseas with that. It was all right, that birth certificate, but it wasn't okay for the railroad when I got on. So
it was okay to fight in a war, but it wasn't okay to work on the railroad.
Because I have a delayed birth certificate, they called it. So, yeah. So I had to find, I got a roll of paper to choke a cow there, trying to prove my age for the railroad. And finally, Dr. Cuddy, I traced him down through the File newspaper in Zealandia File newspaper put out in 1924. And he wrote the CN letter, yeah. Of course, he didn't know what I was named, but he knew there was a boy. And they even sent that letter back, and I wrote to him again, and he wrote the CNR a scathing letter. And that's when they accepted it then. Yeah. crazy. It's
Well-
absolutely crazy.
What was being raised like by your grandmother like? A woman that's 68 and has seen, even for your time, different things.
She had 9 children, and lost 5 of them. She lost 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, either with diphtheria or the flu. I'm not sure. She lost the 2 teenagers in 1 week, and then she lost another boy and a girl that were just little ones.
Holy crap.
She lost those 2 in the same week. Not the same as the teenagers. No, there was quite a few years difference. And then she lost another one at birth. But so then she come up and raised us. Yeah, she was a mom to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd given you a questionnaire, and you'd said she was the most influential person you ever had in your life was your grandmother.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. She always told me if there's a job worth doing, it's worth doing well.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
That's a lot of loss. You think?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, in today's standard, like, it must just be.
Yeah. Then of course, then my brother was killed when she was still there. So that was another one, another.
Yeah.
He was just a young man at the time. Yeah. So she put up with a lot, especially putting up with us 5 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? I guess I'm almost at a loss for words, because it just, my grandmother lost a son at a young age as well. And it just seems like the further you go back, the more commonplace that was.
Yeah.
And yet, I never see bitterness or anything like that in the age groups or
there was a
generations
lot,
before.
There was a lot of children died at birth, and a lot of lady women passed away at birth. During those early days, you used to look in the newspaper. Even after, when I was reading a newspaper, passed away, causes unknown, something like that. Well, they didn't know the things for the doctors in those days that they do nowadays.
Yeah.
No, I lost, just after I joined up, I got into the Air Force. I was in Brandon, and that was, I think, on the 9th of June, I went to Brandon, and on the 26th, I was got word that my brother was missing overseas, and that was in June, and then in first part of December, my grandfather passed away, and then I went overseas the next year, and while I was overseas, my grandmother passed away.
Man.
Yeah, lost all 3 of them in 1 year.
Let's talk about the Great Depression. I was saying before we got on here that I come from, I got my degree in history, and I've read a lot on it and a lot of different things from back in your days. But I thought maybe you could give us a glimpse into going back to then and what it was like, and maybe the struggles you guys faced or what you saw.
Well, my dad, of course, he was a jack of all trades and a master of none, really, but he made a living. Well, he had a tough go of it there, trying to make a living for 8 of us, in the family. My, 5 kids and him and my grandpa and grandma.
Yeah.
When I think back, things were not all rosy with him either. Boy, there was some times there when things were, the old coal bin was pretty, you were burning some very fine coal dust, because you didn't have money to buy a load of coal, but scraped it through. there was things that he should have done, but then I think back of, things that he probably wasn't able to do. Yeah. But in the 30s, we lived down in that Rosetown area. When we moved up around Zealandia, well, it was 1937 was really the worst year, the driest year of all. 1937, there was no rain in that country, and the wind would get up and there'd be a dust cloud. I can remember my granddad and my grandmother's on July the 1st, and I think that was in 1937, and they all went to the lake, Harris Lake, which was quite a few miles from us. They all went in the back of an old Model T Ford truck, and on about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were living in an old house, a 2-story house, two rooms up and 2 down, and we looked out in the west, and there was just a cloud. You maybe saw it on TV there it was just a rolling cloud of dirt coming, and then the wind hit and you couldn't see the barn from the house for dust. It was just unbelievable. And then about probably 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all of a sudden it blew up a rain. We hadn't had a rain, and it absolutely poured, just like a monsoon. Well, the dirt was running down the windows, and from the dust, the dirt stuck on the side of the house, and it washed all of that off, and you could hardly see out the windows in the west side of the house for the dirt that was on them. And by the time it got done, they were clean from the torrential rain. Yeah, and they all got stuck up at the lake. In fact, they started home, and there was a couple. I don't know where it was, but there was no gravel roads, and they were on this more or less like a trail, and they got as far as this little wee house, and they pulled in there, and everybody stayed in there, and I think there was 14 of them in the truck. And they slept the night there, tried to sleep the night in this little wee house, a man and his wife. Yeah, they finally made it home the next afternoon. Yeah. And we lived Eagle Creek. It's like a riverbed north of Rosetown there. Us boys, we used to run up and down those hills. In fact, I took Irene down there to show her those mountains that we used to climb, the little hills in Eagle Creek. And Eagle Creek was about 3/4 of a mile across. And the next morning we had our few cattle that we had. I went down to see how they were doing, and it was a river. The full width of the creek flat there was a river. Yeah, and the cattle would be standing out there on little wee little islands, right tight together to get out of the water. It was something. It was really something. Yeah. So that was we had a garden, I can remember, and we had a long row of trees on the west side of the buildings. And we had our garden there, just a narrow garden, and a Carriganas along the south side. And we looked across, and there you could see the army worms coming. They were coming from the southwest, and it was just black behind them. So we got busy and dug a trench along the south side of the garden and up partway up the west side to run out of steam, and then put a little bit of straw in the bottom of it. Well, it was so dry that the worms got in there and couldn't make it up the other side. And then his dad took kerosene and put that and touched a match to it. Well, it sure got rid of the armyworms and saved the garden, most of the garden. But we couldn't stand the stink for burnt our worms, you know. Can you imagine the stink and the smell it'd be? Just make you throw up. That was another experience in the dirty 30s. Yeah.
What was the things you were short on in the dirty 30s? Was meals tight?
Meals were tight, yeah. You were able to grow a little bit of a garden, you know. You hauled water, pails of water, and there wasn't such a thing as hoses in those days. You carried water by the pails and put on, you know, the things that were the most important, I think. No, we always had enough to eat, you know. I think it was pretty tough on people that lived in town, more, that possibly. I'm not sure on that, but I would imagine that there would be a lot of people that lived in towns, you know, that didn't have a garden or anything, that would have a tough time making it through the 30s. Yeah.
What was the first vehicle you ever owned, or your family ever owned?
Oh, my dad had an old 29 Pontiac Coupe. That was the first car we had.
You remember thinking when he pulled that into the drive, like, holy moly?
Oh, yeah, we didn't get that till, oh, cow. Yeah, we didn't have a vehicle all during pretty well the 30s. I was getting close to 1938 probably, maybe 38 when we got that first vehicle. Yeah, I think about that. 1938, in that area. Not sure, but I think so.
And you used to get to go take it for rides every once in a while?
Oh, yeah. He used it to go to work and that, you know.
What was your father doing for work at the time?
Well, he worked at anything he could get his hand at to make a dollar.
Yeah.
He worked at anything at all. He worked on farms. He worked carpenter work. He worked on an elevator gang, building an elevator, you know, in the 30s. I can remember, he worked on building an elevator at Roasttown, on North Roasttown in that would be I was just a little wee gaffer, probably 3 or 4, 1928 probably. He worked for part of a summer on an elevator gang, just building an elevator there at North Roasttown.
Yeah.
Yep.
What age did you start working at, Si?
Me? Well, I worked spring and fall there for about 3 years when I was going to, about grade 9, grade 10.
Yeah.
And I worked out in the spring and fall there for about 3 years. And it was probably a little more than that. I was in grade 10 and 11. And when it came to grade 11, I flunked my first year in grade 11 because I was, you work out a month in the spring and then a month or more in the fall. So you really were a long ways behind in your schoolwork, And then I joined up, and they sent me home. And then I broke my shoulder that fall, and so it looked like I might not get in, so I was lucky the second year. I went back to school because of my shoulder. I broke my shoulder, and I went back to school as I was laying around doing nothing that winter, and I was okay to work that spring again. And it was a good thing I got my call up then, or I'd have probably flunked my second year in grade 11. As a student, I wasn't the greatest, I guess.
Let's talk about school for a few minutes. Did you go to a rural school, or did you come into Rosetown?
No, I went to Zealandia.
Zealandia had a little one-house room school?
Oh, God, no. No, it was a big brick building.
Oh, okay.
2 rooms up and 2 down.
Oh, wow.
But I went to a country school, 2 of them. When I first started school, I went to one that was just north of Rosetown there by, as I say, about where we lived down at Eagle Creek.
Yeah.
Us boys. And that's where when I first started the school, and then I moved to a little school that was out there just 3 miles from where I was born, a place called Dublin School. Well, then when you got to grade 7, when you finished your grade 7, then you had to go to town school. Yeah.
So how far of a distance were all these schools from where you lived?
Oh, it wasn't bad. When I started school, it was 1.5 miles.
And were you walking?
Yeah. And then, winter, summer. And then...
You say it wasn't that bad, but in today's standards, that's far enough.
No. Oh, God, yeah. Here, we had a school bus in town. Pick kids up in town to take them to school. Like that, I really had to laugh on that one. But the next school was... It all depends on which way we went. If I cut across the field and went straight north, it was 2.5 miles. And then when I got into grade 8, I went to Zealandia, and that was 6 miles. So I went 6 miles. I walked for the first year, pretty well, and then I got a bicycle, and I went by bike. And we lived on number 7 highway, and they just redid that. So it was a big, tall, they used to do that with elevator graders and a big, deep ditch, but a high grade. And so the snow pretty well stayed off of it. And then when it got a little bit too much snow, I had this old bike, and it kept breaking down. So I had a collie dog, so I taught him to pull a sled. And so I thought, I'd come home on a Friday night, and the bike was busted. I had to push it to town to get it welded. So I trained the dog to pull a sleigh, and so I thought, maybe he'd pull the bike. So I put him on a rope out in front of the bike, and I went to school 2 winters with him.
Pulling you?
Pulling me on the bike. on a bike. And then we moved past Zealandia out 3 miles, and he went to pulled me to school for another winter there on the bike. Yeah. He was a fabulous dog. Yeah.
Back then, did you guys have school dances and festivities like that?
Yeah, the country schools had dances every now and again. We used to have in the country, you'd have Christmas concerts,
Yeah.
and put little plays on and sing and all of those little things that go on with Christmas concerts. And I can remember the first Santa Claus I ever saw, and he gave me a paper bag with candy and an orange, a Jap orange in. That was something, boy, I'll tell you. Yeah. That was in 1930. Yeah, 1930. Yeah. Yeah, that was something. Yeah, I really believed in Santa Claus for quite a few years. Yeah.
In 1939, Germany invades Poland.
Yeah.
And World War II is underway.
Yeah.
What's it like back here? Like living out on the farm.
I don't know, things went along pretty well. Just carried on in Canada. Like, that's why I say Canada doesn't have the furthest idea what a war was all about, because they've never experienced something like that. It's pretty hard to tell a person what war was like, you know. The First World War, you read, I just finished a book here a while ago on trench warfare in the First World War. You just can't fathom how bad that would be. Like, I remember my first wife, Audrey, her dad was in the First World War. He was in the trenches, and they had what they called duck boards there. That's like just a, you know, like you use on a forklift, you know, those pallets, you know, something like that. And he had a blanket, and he was laid down to have some sleep, and it has been raining, and there was water in the trench, and he laid down on that and rolled himself in his one blanket that he had, I think. And he woke up. He woke up in the morning, and he felt something warm against his cheek, and there was a rat curled up on the side of his cheek to keep warm. Can you imagine that? And his feet were hanging over the edge, and his legs were in water right up to his knees. Yeah, says that's the only thing he ever said about the world in the trench warfare. But then you read this book, and it's a true story. You can't fathom. John Doe public wouldn't. It's hard to me to fathom, you know, that it could be that bad.
And I think that's what's so why I'm glad you decided to come on here, because we can talk about your experience. Because I was saying to you off air, like my generation, we've lived in probably the best time in the history of the world. Oh. And especially in Canada.
Oh my God. I've said that, time and again. We've said, Irene and I have talked about how fortunate we are. We've gone from my age and horse and buggy days to putting a man on the moon and a spacecraft that's gone by Mars, you know, and we're still conversing with it. That was out past Pluto or something here. And it's been going now for, what is it, 10, 12 years, that one? It's gone past Pluto or something?
They had one leave in the 60s, Si.
Yeah.
And they just lost contact with it in 2014. What is that? Like, we're talking 40-some years.
Yeah, right.
Of going off into space.
Yeah, and being able to still
communicate with it.
Yeah, communicate. It's just mind-boggling. Yeah. And that's why I say, I can remember the big, tall, black man. He lived in the Everglades down in the States there, and they got him one day, and they said, "Do you realize that we've put a man on the moon?" And he said, "There's been a man on the moon for years." No, we're talking about a real man. No, we put him up there with a spacecraft. And he said, pshaw. And that was the end of the conversation. I thought that was really worth to see him on TV. Pshaw, he said. Yeah. Didn't believe him. Yeah. No, we've been so bloody lucky. Boy, out there. Myself, talk about luck. I've been, to live till I'm 95. Yeah, next month or in August, right?
In August, yeah.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, you're freaking impressive. Like, this is unbelievable. I'm sitting here and you're talking like you're 60. Your memory is better than my memory.
Oh no, it's so great. Yeah, the older you get, the further back you can remember, but you can't remember yesterday. Yeah.
Well, in 1939, the war breaks out.
Yeah.
And you said you had two brothers, they both go over?
Yeah, my first brother that was killed overseas, he left when I was in the hospital there with my broken shoulder.
Broken shoulder?
And my other brother, he left shortly after that spring, and he left, and so they were both overseas.
Do you remember what year that was?
Well,
You might have already said it and I just missed it.
Well, that'd be 1942 that my first brother, yeah, they went in 1942.
And they were both in the Air Force?
Yeah, yeah.
One as a rear gunner like yourself, and then one
Yeah,
as a electrician?
Yeah, he was on a squadron of Spitfires, fighter aircraft that went. They went over on the continent, and they more or less they followed the front lines up as they went. The Spits. Yeah.
So
My other brother, he was in four-motored bomber squadron, four-motored aircraft. He was in a Sterling. They were a good aircraft. They flew the same speed, whether they were loaded or empty. Yeah, they were big aircraft. They're bigger than I flew in Lancasters, Canadian-built Lancasters. They were a fabulous aircraft. The Sterlings were a bigger aircraft, but they weren't quite as maneuverable as the Lanc was.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when they leave, is the only way to hear the progress of the war is just by radio?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so was that happening once a day, 10 times a day?
Yeah, you could pick up news. Well, they used to have, I can remember the national news was at 8 o'clock in the evening. I can remember my granddad used to listen to when we got a radio. When did we get a radio? 1938, I think it was.
Give or take.
Might have been before that. Yeah, we had a radio, and my granddad, he was kind of hard of hearing. He would listen to when there'd be just three of us home. My granddad and grandmother and I. And my granddad, he'd listen on Friday nights. He used to really listen to the fights. Joe Louis and the boxing matches on Friday nights. And gangbusters over Chicago. You could pick up Chicago on the radio in those days, And he used to listen to the hockey game, Foster Hewitt.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to listen to the hockey games and listen to the news at 8 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, the national news. But he rarely missed that. Yeah. So he was well versed on how the war was doing too, Yeah. It didn't last very long after it started, but, well, I shouldn't say that. It lasted for 1943 when he passed away.
Well, I think, I had two of my brothers go traveling the world, and by the time the second one traveled, there was just, with technology, there was just so many different ways to keep in touch with them. By that time, you could even have it where it was video calling, right? Like, you could actually see them.
Yeah.
So it never really felt like they were that far away, or the mind just can't understand it when you can see them, right?
Yeah.
The first brother used to send emails, so we used to get an email once a week, so you kind of keep in touch. And I'm trying to get my brain wrapped around having brothers go away to a war and what you guys knew of what was going on, and were you in touch with them at all? Or
Yeah, write letters, but that usually took from 2 weeks to months or more to get a letter.
Yeah.
You'd airmail. And the airmail was a little blue envelope that folded out, and then you folded it up and then glued it. And and that was airmail. Otherwise, you could send a regular letter, and you could put that in regular post
Yeah.
for 3 cents, I think it was. I think that's what a stamp was. Airmail was, well, I'm not sure. I think it was either 6, 8, or 12 cents for the airmail. Went by air. But you can imagine the amount of mail going back and forth with all of the guys that were in the service. Like you take the little village of Zealandia there, that was probably 100 people. Yeah, 100, maybe 150 people in Zealandia. Our honor roll, there was 82 guys.
82.
82 from around the area there, that on the honor roll from the little town of Zealandia. Yeah, but that covered, say 6-8 miles all the way around,
Yeah, but still 82.
That's a
lot.
Oh, I'll
that's a
say
high
it is.
percentage.
Oh, yeah. So, and and we lost, I think 10%, and that's a funny part of the. Most of it was usually around 10% what we lost in deaths, during the war. We lost 10% of the guys that went overseas pretty well in the Second World War. So, and that was about the same around Zealandia. I think we lost 8 guys out of that, out of the.
What was the atmosphere like of going over there? Was there like excitement to go?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, hell, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. Like, getting killed is only going to happen to somebody else. It's, you're that dumb about it, that's for sure. Well, it doesn't go all the time, but there's some times where you're a little scary, but normally, in a workplace, your dangerous job you got, you're not going to get hurt.
I agree, but you're going over to a world war where...
Well, it's the same thing.
I don't know. Millions are dying.
Yeah. But it's...
You're having people shoot at you on a daily.
Yeah.
And, in the workplace here...
Yeah, but it ain't going to hit you.
What did you take for training? Do you remember your training to go over there?
Yeah. Of course, everybody joins up in the Air Force going to be a fighter pilot. Yeah, no. Yeah. No, you can't be a fighter pilot. Yeah, I don't know what was the matter with. I don't think they needed pilots that day, Well, okay. And I told my brothers, I'll see you overseas. Well, they laughed, Here's kids laying in the hospital bed. And my one brother, when he went over, as I said, I'll see you overseas. Oh, yeah, right, yes, but I seen my other brother, the oldest brother.
Yeah.
I seen him.
Must have been...
3 times, I think.
Must have been tough to watch him go. I can just imagine my brothers going off.
Yeah. Oh, as I say, yeah, it was kind of lonesome around home, when we'd get together. Yeah, they're both overseas, yeah. We used to get their letters, yeah. But, you didn't write home, every week.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, yeah.
In your training, they put you in a Lancaster bomber?
No, you never hit 4-motored aircraft till just before you went to the squadron. You started out on little single-motored aircraft, like gunners did.
Yeah.
Well, you had a cockpit up in the back of it there with a machine gun in it. And I went when I first went in, I took my basic training. That's to learn to march and all of that sort of garbage, you know, in Brandon, Manitoba. And then we went to ground school, went to Winnipeg from there, and you learnt the Morse code then. The three other basic things about it. And then we went from there out to Rivers, Manitoba, and that was an aerodrome there. And you did Joe jobs there. It's just like a holding area to wait for you to get into a school where you take the other stuff that you need to. So, and you had to learn to do those jobs because you might flunk out in the air crew, so then you'd be stuck in a ground crew, you know, and you might be doing Joe jobs for the whole war. Lots of guys did that, you know. You call it Joe jobs. I'm talking about cleaning bathrooms and that sort of stuff. I did that too. And then we went to Quebec City, and again we did learnt the Morse code, and you do aircraft recognition, you know, and learnt what an aircraft, like you learnt what all the aircraft wear, when they're coming straight at you, you know, or the outline of them. You know, you had to know whether it was a Spitfire going to fly behind you, or if it was a Messerschmitt 109 or a Focke-Wulf 190, German aircraft. So you had to know all of those aircraft. Otherwise, you'd shoot your own aircraft down, you know. So you did spend a lot of time learning aircraft recognition, and they did that in Quebec City. And then they sent us back to, I came back to McDonald, Manitoba. That was just north of Portage la Prairie, you know, this side of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Okay, we went to McDonald, Manitoba, and then that's when you learned to fire your machine guns from air to ground or air to air. You'd learn to fire at a drogue that another aircraft was pulling on a cable, you know, away out behind about, you know. So you learned all those things and how to do it.
So in total, how many months were you in training then before you got
Not
deployed?
very long. Yeah, that's why when I couldn't be a pilot, well, then a navigator, well, I said, well, you can be a navigator. How long does that take? Well, a year and a half. Oh, well, what else you got? A buy me? Well, about the same. No, I don't want that. Yeah, wireless operator, how long is that? Oh, about a year. No. What's the least? Air gunner. How long does that take? 6 months. I'm going to be an air gunner.
So you just were eager to get over there.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I wanted to be over there to see my brothers. Yeah.
So what was the biggest shock then when you finally got over there?
My biggest shock?
Yeah, like, I mean, now you where do you get stationed when you leave Canada?
Well, we left on a troop ship, and there was 12,000 of us on it. We went over to the New Amsterdam, and there was 12,000 of us on it. We landed at just at Gourock, Scotland, just west of Glasgow, and then they took us way down to the south coast to Bournemouth, and we were in a holding unit there until we got to go to a flying training school, and we finally got out of there, and we went to a place where there was two motored aircraft, a bomber type aircraft, flew Wellingtons, and that's where we crewed up, where you got your crew, and there was 6 of us got together. Just everybody didn't have anybody to fly with, and you just that guy, he looked okay. And we were lucky. We had a fabulous aircraft crew. My pilot, he was from just out of Galt, Ontario. My bomb aimer was just out of the suburb of Toronto. My navigator was out of Toronto. My mid-upper gunner was from Toronto. My wireless operator, he was from Vanguard, Saskatchewan. That's down by east of Swift Current. And then myself. And then so we finished the training on two-motored aircraft. And then they sent us to a training unit on four-motored aircraft. And then you needed an engineer, so that's when we picked up our engineer. He'd been overseas. He joined up in the Army, and he went overseas in the fall of 1939, just when the war broke out. And but then he remustered into aircrew, and he became an engineer. So he was from down east someplace, but he married over there. He was married by the time we got over there, you know. And so he, if he had some time off, like he'd get a 48-hour pass, you know, well, he'd always go to where his wife was, you know. So, yeah. So then there was 7 of us then on a crew with, and then when we got proficient with that, being as a crew and everything, then they sent us to our squadron. So they sent us to the squadron in 1944, in August of 1944. Yeah. And started flying operational trips in around the 1st of September.
What was that like?
In 1944. Exciting. That was, yeah. That was their first few trips. Well, we were very fortunate in that we went. Our first trip was to Cap Grahame, which was just across the channel. They said that, the rear gunner, he shouldn't even have got credit for being over enemy territory because it was right on the coast. Yeah, so then, and so we really got broke in easy. Our 4th trip, we went to Bergen, Norway, and on a bombing run all across the North Sea. We flew it right down along the water there so they wouldn't pick us up on radar, you know, going across the North Sea. And then we climbed up and bombed a submarine pens in a fjord at Bergen, Norway. Yeah, it was just on TV the other night, Bergen, Norway. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Yeah, you saw, and it showed a picture of it from above, you know. It was, I said, I read, whoops. Yeah. So then we started going to Germany after that. And pretty well all my trips after that were all to Germany.
What was it like? I don't even know if I can ask this properly, but bear with me. You come up, you're under the radar, so nobody can pick you up.
Yeah.
Are your hairs standing on end? Like, are you?
No, not really. No. There was some times there. When I flew, we had pretty well control of the skies, you know, really. Whereas when my brother flew, no, it was the Germans had control of the skies with fighter aircraft. When I went over, there was guys got shot down, but not to the amount that there was when my brother did. My brother lasted only 7 trips, and when he got shot down, lots of guys got shot down on their very first trip, you know.
And how many trips did you take, Si?
I was 36.
36?
Yeah. Yeah, that was 32 was classed as a tour of ops for Bomber Squadron, and we did 36. Well, the Germans put a big push to the Ardennes. We were getting we were winning the war, so, and we weren't losing aircraft like in numbers like they were, like say when my brother did, say.
Yeah.
So he'd be training a lot of guys, so they'd cut back on the training, and then the Germans put a big push on, so they had aircraft in the sky. They gathered up everything they had and made a last push, and so we were losing aircraft and air crew quite strongly, and so they just upped the amount of trips we had before they screened us, they might say. They call it screening, you know, that was your last trip. So we did 4 extra trips, and it just classed as a tour. See, after you got 32 trips in or finished a tour of ops, then you had a rest period, and sometimes you were able to come home for a while. But if you only had one tour, the guys that finished a tour of ops, say at my brother's time, if they finished a tour of ops at 32 trips, they'd get some time off, and then they'd be back and fly another tour. Some guys flew 3 and 4 tours, like fellas that were over there early, you know, in the 39 and 40, you know. Yeah, flew the goddamnest aircraft you could ever see. Where we flew pretty good aircraft, like the Lancaster was a fabulous aircraft. Yeah. And the Halifax, yeah. I'll just show you what a Lancaster looks like. In fact, I think I got a book right here for my son.
While I'm looking at a picture of the Lancaster bomber, if people haven't seen it, they might as well go look it up online, because it is something. But your view from the tail must have been something else.
Oh yeah, well, you get to see where you've been.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the worst of it is when you're up in front, and then you're looking at when they were shooting at you, putting up flak, they call it. It's exploding shells, eh? And that brought down a lot of aircraft, and the sky would be just black. You'd look up ahead because they had, some cities were really, what do you call it? Had a pile of guns around them, to keep aircraft from shooting down, especially cities that had a lot of manufacturing, like wartime manufacturing.
Yeah.
They would have a lot of guns around it, to keep you from bombing them, So they'd pick up at what height you were, and then they would set their exploding shells to explode at that height.
Yeah.
So yeah, we flew at around 20,000 feet. Yeah, that was about the average for a Lancaster and Halley. Americans, the old Flying Fort, they flew higher. They were able to fly, but they seemed to be flying about the same height as we were,
And how many bombs would you carry on you at a time?
Well, it all depends. You could carry different. You carried 500 pounders. We'd carry 14,000 pounds.
14,000 pounds of
bombs. Yeah, but that's if you're only going say 6 hours, flying time, like 3 hours over there and 3 hours back. Eh? But the further you went, well, the less bombs you had because you needed more petrol.
That's right, to get you there and back without
right. Yeah, they gave you a little
fuel.
They give you a little extra time of fuel.
Could you feel the shock from up that high, or it was just an image of explosions below you? Like with a 500 pounder, would that?
No, you'd feel say a 4,000 pounder, a bomb. You'd feel about 4,000 feet. You'd feel a little bit of a thump,
Yeah.
when she exploded. Of course, then they had the big ones there near the end of the war. They were huge, yeah. Then you'd feel them way up there, yeah. No, most of the time you didn't, yeah. if you were flying it down there, it, say you had 500-pound bombs, and you were dropping them, well, if you were flying at 500 feet, you weren't doing much bombing, I tell you.
Yeah.
That's when it was scary, because those guys down there, you were looking at light anti-aircraft. You're looking at machine guns and everything, but we never flew that low. No.
You fly with the same 7 guys every time you flew then?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that created a bond like no other.
Yeah, it did. Yes. My mid-upper gunner, we had wound up with different ones. We won't go into that. I had about 4 different mid-upper gunners, but we won't touch that. It's
sure.
The first one is, the guy that we first got rid of, he was with the crew. He just went spare, and flew with any crews. He flew with a crew. The pilot was on his 3rd tour of operations, and some of them were on their 2nd, and they got shot down. And he was the only one that lived. Apparently, my pilot met him on the streets of Toronto 2 or 3 years after he got taken prisoner at the last.
Of course, the phone has to ring and interrupt us. No, that's quite all right. That's not a big deal at all.
Okay.
I was wondering, so we were talking about the 7 guys you were in a crew with. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you weren't flying missions every single day.
No.
So what did you do in the barracks in between?
In between?
Was it card games? Was it training? Was it?
Yeah, you had pool tables and ping pong tables, and you play penny ante or crap game or something if you wanted to go along that line, or there was lots of stuff to do on the station. On most of those stations, like you could play softball, or hardball, or soccer. So there was lots to do. You didn't really have to sit in the barracks and look at 2 walls. No, I used to play pool and play ping pong. Oh yeah, there was lots of stuff to do. This when I was on the squadron. Well, all the stations were pretty. Some stations were way better. The station our squadron was on used to be a permanent station, like it was an Air Force station, RAF, like Royal Air Force. They used that before the war, even, when they first started flying aircraft, really, during the First World War. So there's a lot of the, of course, the population of it wouldn't have been as many before the war, So their sleeping quarters weren't as much. So when they started using it during the war, well, then they built a lot of Nissen huts, and they had 12 beds in them, each one of them on the squadron, yeah. And then they made mess tents there where you went, and on our squadron there, we used to go outside the main gate to go to the mess hall, yeah. So, yeah, we were very fortunate all the way along, really. The aircraft that in training wore right out, like, man, like the old, when I got my wings up at McDonald, Manitoba, north of there, when I got my wings as an air gunner, we have old ferry battles. They first came out, they were supposed to be a fighter aircraft. The damn things weighed a ton or whatever. They lost those aircraft when they first started using them as a fighter. They just lost as fast as they put them in the air. They lost them. Those and crews, So they put them into training. Well, then they had the old Ansons and the old two-motored aircraft for guys that were going to be pilots and bomber pilots or whatever, and then they had the Harvards. They were a single. They were a good aircraft. But as I say, man, you take they had in number three, I think it was SFTS in Saskatoon. They flew Harvards out of there, and they were a good aircraft. Yeah. And the guys had come clear out as far as Rochestown on cross countries, and they used to in fact, we did in this little open turret. All there was something in front of you but the rest was all open, and you'd be in the winter time, Christ, it was 20 below or 30 below, and we'd be out and we would shoot at air to ground, like out in Lake Winnipeg. They'd put spruce trees in the ice and you practiced shooting that way. Or then they'd be shooting at a drogue that another aircraft would be. Well, anyway, this day my pilot, he said that's what he did. Instead of going overseas, a lot of guys had it stuck with flying that sort of crap, joined up to be a fighter pilot. And, and so were you a fighter pilot? No, I flew that damn air gunner, sir. But anyway, this day, my pilot said, "Are you all done?" And I said, "Yep." Well, settle down. We'll go a little cross country. So I'm hunkered away down in there, and I was just looking out like this, and all of a sudden I looked at, holy cow, they're going west. They got a high line, those big tall steel towers with power lines. We went underneath them. So then I really got interested. Look at, and there's the local telephone line right there. And the snow was swirling out behind us. So then I really get interested. I get up, look up straight ahead, and there was a little black dot up there, and it's getting closer. And here's a farmer up there in a big old buffalo coat, and he's up on a 3-deck wagon box, all hunched over, going down a trail with a team of horses, and there was a black collie dog running along behind, and we went over top of him.
And you buzzed the tower on.
We went right over top of him. Oh, what a dirty thing to do. Those horses turned around right in the harness, right near. And his 2 feet was out, and I'm sure that dog came out from underneath the sleigh and took off across country. Oh, yeah, I thought to the guy, he said, "What do you think of that?" I said, "Well, I'm a country boy. I don't think that was a very nice thing to do. He could have ruined a team of horses." But you take those guys that are flying out of Saskatoon, those Harvard young guys, flying under bridges, and there'd be more than one guy lost his life going under a bridge. Or one fellow up the North Saskatchewan, I think it was, one or the other, he decided to shoot up a ferry going across there, but he forgot about the ferry only runs from a cable, and he hit the cable and killed himself, and the ferry, it floated away down the river before they got it back. It cost them hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Yeah, killed himself, hit the cable. Yeah. But those fellows, they were always chasing cattle and farmers around in the fields and that sort of thing, and they weren't supposed to. Some guys would get washed out. They grounded for the rest of the war. Yeah.
I'm wondering, in the war, there's a couple big moments that always get talked about. Pearl Harbor in 1941. Yeah,
I was at home when that happened. Yeah. My brothers were still home too at that time. Well, You know what, really? Yeah. Shouldn't say it, but I don't know how long the United States would have stayed out of the war. They might have stayed out of the war long enough that the Allies would have, Hitler would have beat us, because then they entered the war. They
That's
had
right.
to enter the war.
Yeah.
And they started helping out over. Otherwise, before that, no. All they did was sit back and sell.
Arms.
Yeah.
And machinery.
Yeah.
And ammo and everything else.
Yeah. We had a lot of guys, Americans, join up with the Canadian forces. Came up from there. We had a fellow on our squadron. Mackey was his name. He was quite a guy. He was our squadron, and he was a sergeant pilot. And of course, they always thought that, Canadians, a pilot, if he's the boss, maybe he should be an officer. He should at least be one stroke above the rest of his crew. But Mackey, every time he'd come up to get his commission, he'd pull some prank, and most of it was he'd shoot up the airfield with a four-motored aircraft. And one day we were up by the control tower, and the control towers, it's higher than.
That's right.
Yeah, he came across there at about 3 feet off the deck with a four-motored aircraft and pulled her up and went over the control tower. And an Air Force girl, she jumped out a window and you seen him coming and broke her collarbone. And that was so they grounded Mackey then. And of course, then he never came up for a commission for quite some time. And when he did, he'd do the same thing again, So he wound up, after the war, we sent us guys back down to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, and who's there but Mackey was there. Still walking along with his boots undone, and his battle dress undone, and walked through we were down in Yarmouth, and of course, when you got back to Canada, well, things were overseas. You never paid any attention to saluting some officer, because there was so many of them. And but when you got back to Canada, you saluted everybody that was an officer. Over in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, we're walking along, and Mackey's got his boots undone and slopping along there, his battle dress undone. We're through. When you come to the attention areas where the flag was, and you walked through there. You marched through there and you saluted the flag. Well, yeah, that didn't go over when you're overseas, This big car pulled up with a purple flag on it, and here's the old groupie. Yeah. Well, he chewed our butts off, And Mackey was standing there saluting him. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And the old guy's in there. And finally he said, "Oh, bull." Oh, God, yeah. Those funny things happen. Yeah. Yeah, Mackey. Let's go to Mackey.
What about how about D-Day? I
wasn't to the squadron yet, but we were flying in two motored aircraft then, Wellingtons. They grounded us. All local air traffic was grounded because the sky was full of aircraft going across. You wouldn't believe, from not having hardly an aircraft that was worth 2 cents at the start of the war in 1939. You wouldn't believe that you could put that much stuff in the air. And they're talking about Lancasters and Halifaxes and American aircraft and two motored aircraft and the old DC-3s, two motored aircraft. They were a workhorse, pulling gliders, And it didn't matter where you looked in the sky on D-Day, that you could probably count, I bet you could count 100 aircraft flying. And it went on all day and all day. Yeah.
As a part of the Air Force, did you go, what on earth is going on, or did everybody know what was going on?
Oh, you knew what was going on. Yeah, you knew it was D-Day then. Yeah. As soon as it happened, yeah, you knew it was D-Day. But in going across England, you know, that little island, yeah. And that you just can't imagine you could build that amount of stuff in 4 years. You know, it's just mind-boggling to think. Yeah. I forget how many Lancasters they built a day in Canada.
Well, they pretty much converted every factory into building.
Yep.
Like everything.
No cars.
That's right.
Speak of, yeah.
Yeah.
If they were used in
the war
forces.
Effort.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Was there anything before you left over here in the Rose Tannery? Was there any factories or anything like? Were you guys doing anything to support the war effort?
Oh, cripe, down east. Oh, yeah. There was everybody was busy. Like the girls, lots of women went down east and worked in factories in Winnipeg and cities.
So moved from Saskatchewan to go out east?
Oh, sure. All over Canada. Yeah. Oh, cripe, yeah. You better not be not busy working, because, yeah. And like over in England there, they had what they call the Land Army girls. Like everybody worked. In the Land Army, they did men's work. Yeah, they had a uniform, the girls did. And they did lumbering and field work, you name it. They did it, yeah. Just amazing, yeah. No, there was thousands of women worked. That's when girls and women, when they came, what would you call it, came into their own, that they should have been recognized long before that, you know. Yeah. They found out that they were doing work that men could do quite easily. There was lots of transport drivers over in England were all girls. Yeah. In fact, the Queen, there she was. She drove transport during the war.
Did she?
Yeah. She was with the...
If there was something like... Yeah, I like the word you use, fathom. You can't fathom it. Right now, I cannot fathom what you're talking about. I can't even begin to imagine.
Yeah.
But if there was one piece of advice you could take from being a part and going through that and being, Canada didn't see the war on its own territory, but it was a huge part of the World War.
Oh, cripe.
Is there something that you could tell the generations now what would be the advice you'd pass along from being a part of something like that?
Oh. I don't know. You're never going to stop wars. It's ridiculous, I know, because look at what we got right now. We got guys, China, Trump, Russia, Putin there. There's about 4 guys there could start a war just like that tomorrow. And then people would be crazy enough to go to fight while that guy sits at home, It's like in the First World War, the generals, I think each general, a lot of them were in charge of a certain part of the front lines. And I think they would... there was only about 1 or 2 of them that were up in the front lines with the fighting men. The rest were all back sitting having tea. And it's your turn to attack on your salient tomorrow, maybe, And they're like And so they just attacked, against strongholds that Germans had. And we lost thousands and thousands of men. Like Vimy cost us how many? 3,000-4,000 dead. Yeah, Vimy Ridge.
Yeah.
And that was really something to take Vimy Ridge and only lose 3,000. I think it is. Now, those figures are maybe not exactly right. I forget how many dead it cost us on Vimy Ridge.
Regardless, it was a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And yet, to take that, they've been trying to take it that cost the English, the Allied forces, it cost us thousands of men to take. That was trying to take a thing that was impossible to take the way they were doing it, Yeah, it's stupid, absolute stupidness, really.
Do you think that another world war then is inevitable?
Oh, God. I would, nowadays, you could just about ruin the whole world with the bombs now we have, Christ. You almost clean out the city of New York, for Christ's sake, with about 2 bombs. Unbelievable. Look at what we did to Nagasaki and Hiroshima, yeah. With 1 bomb, boom. And now they're 10 times as great as that, so, yeah. Korea there, that asshole we got out Korea there. But, oh well. Oh yeah, like, they're flying overseas just like a pea shooter. It's about like a pea shooter nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever? I was wondering. I was watching a documentary on World War II, and they were talking about bombers going, I think from either side, going over and dropping pamphlets. And
yep.
Did you guys ever do any of that?
Yeah, we did a couple.
And what were on your pamphlets? Do you remember?
Oh, propaganda.
Do you remember what the propaganda said?
No, he never paid any attention to that. Or the other thing, we did a couple of trips. Out of the bottom of the aircraft was a tube about this big around and about this long.
So for people who can't see the size, it's about 3 inches in diameter.
No, about that big around.
Yeah.
And about that long.
Yeah, and a couple feet long.
Halfway down was razor blades stuck on the edge. Well, you took strips of aluminum, the strips of aluminum about that long and that's long, and they were made up in bundles.
Okay.
So you drop those in there, and you flew over, and that's when Hitler figured that the main attack on D-Day, you've read that, he said he wouldn't listen to them, to Rommel and them saying, no, they're not going to attack there. They're going to attack down, about where we really did. He wouldn't listen. No, it's going to be up there. So one of the reasons is we flew over that thing, and they call it window. They call that stuff window. How it ever got the name of window. So you just keep dropping these bundles out of there. And there's millions of strands this long would flutter through the air. And you'd get quite a few aircraft dropping those. And it'd look like the bomber squadron was coming that way. On their radar.
Yeah.
It showed up as a bomber squadron.
I had not heard that.
Yeah. And they call that window.
So you drop window from the plane.
Yeah.
So that they'd think that a squadron was coming in over here, but realistically everybody's positioned way over on the other side.
Yeah. So then they'd send their fighters that way to intercept that bomber squadron.
Absolutely. And they get over there and there'd be a bunch of tinsel flying.
There wasn't any. All of a sudden you quit dropping it and headed for home. But they'd already moved their fighters up to intercept this bomber squad or bomber, you know. Yeah, there was all kinds of this stuff
Little
going
tricks
on.
of the trade.
Yeah. Hmm. So we did that. We did a couple of trips just before D-Day. Yeah, heading that direction. Yeah, it was quite interesting. Yeah. So you just had this stuff piled in the aircraft and the
And just drop it as fast as you
the
can.
bomb aimer, and the wireless operator there, just popping it up through those. Yeah, and there was, yeah, they were quite tightly packed. But as soon as you dropped it in there, the suction,
Yeah, would pull it right through the razor
would
blades.
pull it right through there, and then it'd just disintegrate. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Yeah.
Another thing the boys had sent me was a news article from Yorkshire about a plane crash at the airbase that you were a part of.
Yeah.
What happened there?
That was an amazing thing. My son in Airdrie was looking at Facebook or one of them, and he heard a name on his phone. He heard it, and that's familiar. So then he got interested, and it was the base that I was on.
Yeah.
How that thing ever got there, they said had quite an experience at the base on this aircraft. It was us taking off. The old Halifaxes, they had Merlin engines in them, and they were wore right out, and they had quite a drift to port to left, and so you're supposed to counteract that with throttle. You just give more throttle to you, but they were so wore out that to get the damn thing off the ground, you had right through the gate. You had the throttles as far forward as you could get to get them off the ground because they were wore out. Well, so here we are. I'm sitting in the rear turret and tails up, and we're doing 110, and all of a sudden you're looking back and there's the runway, and all of a sudden the runway goes that way, and we're taking off across the airfield, and there was an aircraft sitting down there waiting for us to go by. Well, we're heading straight for it. So my pilot touched the brakes a little bit, and it got too much, and we're heading straight towards another aircraft. And the only way we're going to miss it is we couldn't go any further to the left. So we pulled up the undercarriage, and there's a solenoid that the engineer had to stick his thumb through this hole and trip a solenoid for you to pull the undercarriage up. Well, you're quite a fit in the air, to start with. We're still doing 110, and we dropped and we hit the ground and bounced, and part of the tail on the port side disappeared, and this big black bundle of stuff went flying by, tumbling through the dirt and the dust. And hell, that's the port inner engine. And Jesus, we bounced, and then we came back up in the air about 10 feet or so. And the next time we came down, we hit a gravel pile, and the other part, the starboard inner motor, went by on the other side. And we came to rest right underneath the wing of that aircraft, sitting there. It was an operational aircraft, had motor problems, and it got diverted to our airdrome with engine problem or something.
Yeah.
And he had a full bomb load and a full pet load on, and he's got guys standing around there, and the engineer said, even though we were going across there, he said it was quite funny. It looked like ants leaving an anthill because they were running in every direction, because here we are coming straight at them, And we stopped a foot from hitting the undercarriage underneath that there. And my pilot, he opened the escape hatch above, and and climbed up and stood right out on the wing of that aircraft. Yeah. And I'm quite a bit of the air. You got out of the aircraft quick, as fast as you could, and got the hell away from it in case it caught on fire, because usually, yeah, I dropped out of there and hit the ground running pretty near. Yeah. And that was that crash.
I got the article on my phone.
What was that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, like it's...
Yeah, there's some different things that happened that he hasn't got it in there. Yeah.
No, it's pretty cool, and it's even got a little write-up on you.
Oh, yeah, each one of us says absolutely. Where we're from.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says Si Campbell was born in August 1924 in Zealandia, Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And was working and farming there when enlisted in the RCAF service in Saskatoon on the 9th of June 1943. He was also posted to the 419 Squadron, and having risen to the rank of WWII, he too was recommended for the DFC on the 22nd of May 1945.
Yeah.
When he had flown 35 sorties between the 28th of September 1944 and the 15th of March 1945 as a rear gunner. The recommendation also states, this warrant officer has completed 35 operational sorties, the majority of which have been over the most heavily defended targets in Europe. WO2 Campbell's cooperation, coolness, devotion to duty contributed in large measure to the successful completion of an operational tour, and his cheerful confidence has inspired a high standard of morale in his crew and the squadron in general.
Yeah, that's putting it on pretty heavy, I think.
I don't know. I mean, that's pretty cool for an article to be stumbled upon like that.
Yeah.
And then for them to have, in your questionnaire, you always talk about how happy you are to be where you're at and everything else. And
yeah, that's
right?
for sure. Yeah.
And it's cool that they caught that back then, because obviously that hasn't changed now in how many years?
Yeah, that'd be my pilot and them that wrote that up. That's when they got the DFCA. So a lot of it would be from my pilot and my crew, Yeah.
When Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened and the end of the war comes, right? It's all done.
Yeah.
What were the thoughts of the group? Everybody's ecstatic?
Well, see, after I finished my tour, then I went as instructing aircraft recognition, and then we came back to we'd all joined up to go to the Middle East to fight against Japan, my whole crew.
Okay.
But of course we all got split up, and if the war would have kept up, it probably had a whole different crew. If we'd have gone we wouldn't have wound up with the same crew again, I don't think. No, because I never seen my guys after that. I seen my bomb aimer down at Yarmouth, but I was in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Then I was supposed to be instructing Japanese aircraft recognition. Good God, I didn't know a zero from a ferry battle, And I was trying to tell guys that were flight lieutenants and that sort of thing. Commission guys, they'd already did a tour or two over in Burma and down in there. They should have been the ones that were instructing, not this kid. I didn't know the first thing about it. Then, boy, when VJ Day come along, was I ever happy, because I just would sweat. Every morning I'd have to go and try and tell these guys what a zero looked like, and I didn't have the faintest idea. This is how stupid the military can be at times. Send this coyote in there
So when you come back from over there, what do you do?
That is a tough thing, boy, I'll tell you. See, you take a lot of guys were criticized. I was only in for 2 years, And when all of a sudden the war's over, it's like you're out in the middle of dropping out without a parachute. You don't know, what the hell am I going to do? Like, of all this time, you've had somebody tell you what to do. All of a sudden, you got to tell yourself. You got to tell yourself what you're going to do, not have somebody else tell you. So, and that is a tough thing. You take some of those boys that have been in since 1939, and they never got their discharge till 1945. They had a family at home they'd never seen. Some kids their kids going to school, for God's sake. Wife got pregnant, when they left, and they're gone for 6 years. And the little child doesn't know him from Adam, Here's a guy that has been in there and somebody's been telling him what to do all those years. And, when you're learning, when you're a teenager and up to 20 years old, 21, 22, that's your top learning portion of your life, that what the rest of your life is going to be. And there you are out on a limb, and the guy's standing there with a saw going to cut it off, It's a hell of a feeling. It is. And I was only in 2 years. I didn't have a problem, really. My dad had a moving outfit, so I had something to do when I first got home. I was home on leave there for a while, for a month's leave, before I went down to Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And even after I got out, and everything you picked up was 50 pounds, jacks and, all that stuff, moving buildings. That was tough work. And you weren't used to tough work, That just about killed me. After about 4 days, I'd had to make an excuse. I wanted to go and see a buddy of mine. Yeah, right. Yeah, it was just an excuse to get the hell out of there, so I didn't have to do any work. But it is a heck of a feeling, and I thought about those fellows that had been in, since 1939, and all of those years. Yeah. When we got to Brandon, we had you were set up in flights, about 55 guys, and then you had a corporal, and you did your basic training. You knew how to march, and you knew how to salute, and all of that sort of garbage, Well, these fellows, those 12 of them, they had joined up when war was first declared. What they did, they gave them an old Enfield rifle, and they sent them up to the Aleutians in case the Japs came along. They had this old Enfield rifle that if you're scared you ever got a shell in the barrel, that it was all rusted, and they were terrible things. So they're up there for 4 years. Yeah. And then they send them down to Brandon to do the basic training. Can you imagine what those guys would be like? They'd tell, yeah, right. Yeah. I can remember, this is getting a little dirty side. The guy was Campbell. His name was Vincent Donald. And my name is Silas Franklin. Well, anyway, yeah. Vince, he was quite a character, yeah. But anyway, so they called him Venereal and me Sif. His VD,
yeah,
and me SF.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah, that didn't last long. Yeah.
You had to, in those years that you're in the war, obviously humor had to play a big part of it because you're under so much stress, right?
Oh, fabulous. It was, well, you can imagine what it'd be like getting 18, 19, 20-year-old guys together.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great experience. I wouldn't have missed it for my life, even if I'd have bit the dust. It was really something, and exciting and scary at times, sometimes we were flying along there, and you're in the rear turret, and you can look right down alongside of you, and there's some ack coming up at you, and you think, ooh, I wonder if that one way down there has got my name on it, or something like that. So there's some times you wondered about, some days you thought you kind of had a feeling that maybe you wouldn't make it. That trip, I remember my pilot saying one time, of course he's sitting up there, he's got to take his crew into that thing where it's nothing but like ack bursts, great big, and every once in a while they'd put up a boomer as though an aircraft had hit an aircraft. When you get a direct hit and all of a sudden aircraft just goes off like a actual bomb, really, and nothing comes out of it, just pieces, no parachutes come out. A friend of us, our crew, good friends, were flying out there about 300 yards or 100 yards or something like that, and they got a direct hit one night, on a daylight trip, and and there wasn't anything come out of it, and that really shakes you up, that sort of thing really hits home. Then you kind of, it's kind of hard sitting there on that hard seat because you figure you're going to get one up your ass, But my pilot, he looked up one day and he said, boys, and he had that feeling that day. Boys, he said, I don't know if I can take you in there. And a little voice come on the intercom. Oh, and Osborne was his name, and we called him Ozzy. Oh, Ozzy, you got to have faith. Yeah, I guess so, he said. I think it was my navigator that said it. Nobody owned up to it. Yeah. Oh, you got to have faith, Ozzy. Yeah. So, that was it. So those times are pretty scary. Yeah. Flying. But
I should have started it off with this. I'd had a lot of people text me, and I'd thought it when I first knew you were coming on, but so grateful for what you guys did. Like, you're a part of, we get to live in a place that the freedoms we have is just, we take it for granted almost every day.
Yeah.
If it isn't because of what went on back then, it might not be the way it is.
Oh, hell. Well, as I say, like my brother there, did you ever hear the name Mynarski?
I can't say I have.
Mynarski was a mid-upper gunner. He was on a crew on our squadron. The aircraft, they call it the Mynarski aircraft that's down at Hamilton, the Lancaster that's flying. There's only 2 Lancasters flying in the world. The other one's over at Croydon, at airfield just the other on the outskirts of London, England.
Yeah.
The other one is down at, you can go to Nanton, south of Calgary, if you want to see a Lancaster.
Okay.
They'll taxi it out, and the 4 motors are running, and it's just fabulous. Yeah, everything is there.
I'll have to do that.
It is. It's and they have a time. I think it's in September. I'd have to find out. I wouldn't mind going back. Well, they treated me like royal because I flew in one. I forget what I was going to say. What the hell was I going to say? Must have been a lie.
It was a name.
Oh, Mynarski.
Mynarski.
Okay. They got hit and were on fire. And the pilot said, Mynarski was the mid-upper gunner. He said, abandon aircraft. Mynarski goes, there was a door halfway back there in that aircraft, back down about here. And he noticed the rear gunner couldn't get his, he was stuck in there. The damn thing was, they'd got hit with flak too. And of course, and they were on fire. And Mynarski was back in there trying to get it open and trying to get him out, and he couldn't. And he finally the rear gunner looked at him, he says, hollering at him, go, go, go. And his clothing was on fire. And he got his chute was on. He had it on. And his clothing was on fire. And Mynarski walked back and turned and saluted him and jumped out. And his chute burnt in midair. He lived when he hit the ground, but they died shortly after. The aircraft came down and hit and exploded when it hit the ground, and all the other guys were gone, And the rear turret came off and rolled out away from the aircraft, and the doors flew open, and the rear gunner fell out on the ground. Just a few bruises. Can you believe? Yeah.
I cannot believe. That is unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Audrey and I, my first wife, Audrey, 409 Squadron was reconstituted up at Cold Lake, and Audrey and I went up there, like the squadron. It was like well, who was there but Mynarski's crew, and we got teamed up with them. We found out we were from the same squadron. See, that was in May that happened, when they bailed out and got taken prisoners. And so we spent the evening with them, 2 nights, and Audrey danced. Oh, it was and the funny part was, I had seen the navigator. He was big, tall, he had about as much meat on him as that door. And him and my navigator were friends, because he stayed on the squadron as an instructor.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so he remembered my navigator, Bob Young. Yeah, so we just had a great time. Talked to the rear gunner. Yeah, he said, that didn't take very long to get to the ground, he said. Can you imagine what he'd be thinking? I think this is going to hurt.
No kidding. If he was thinking anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, a friend of mine, he got blown right out of the aircraft. He was a rear gunner too. And it was a beautiful moonlight night. And he got blown out of there, and he's floating around, and the moon was between his legs, and all of a sudden the moon disappeared over here. And that's when he came to and realized that he was floating through space with they just issued us with seat packs. The rear gunners had seat packs. They didn't. Before that, they wondered, they were losing rear gunners. For the simple reason, if they had to bail out and you're going down, you had to turn your thing around, and your motors are probably dead. So you had a little crank there that you had to slowly, in your turret, move around till it's straight in line with your aircraft. You pull your doors open, lean back, get your chest pack, your parachute on, put it on, go back in, and then turn that little crank till it slowly went around to the beam, and then fall out backwards. Like they thought, oh, you know what? I'll bet you if we gave the rear gunners a seat pack like the pilot, it would probably save some guys.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's what happened to this Bill McLeod. Yeah, so he's floating through space. Yeah, and he came down in the upstairs of a house that had the thing blown off. Yeah, and he got taken prisoner. My other guy, friend was on the squadron. He didn't have a parachute when he got blown out of the aircraft there at the rear turret, and he landed on the bounced off a haystack, the only one in the field. And he bounced off a haystack out on the ground and wound up with a broken leg or something like that. Other than that, nothing the matter. Yeah, got taken prisoner. Yeah. Could you imagine? How lucky could you get? Yeah.
When you come back, how long is it until you start working on the railroad?
Oh,
what did we say?
I started on the railroad
1948?
48, yeah.
What made you decide to go to the railroad?
Well, I was down east working in the body shop, and the paint got to me. I got pleurisy, so I had to get out of there. Came back out to Marengo. My sister and her husband, he was the elevator agent. Came out there and worked for a guy that had a hardware and a garage, and I was running the hardware. And the CN station agent by the name of Sibbald, his name was, just happened to be talking to him one day, and you ever think of going to work on the railroad? I was free and easy. Well, I guess he sent my name in. And so on September the 17th of 1948, I finished up. I quit there. A guy by the name R.B. Campbell, he needed some harvest help, so I went running a combine that fall. And I finished and was just pulled him in the yard and was getting it set up to put away for the winter. And the phone rang, and the guy was there said, "The guy Sibbald wants to talk to you." He says, "Yeah, this is Sibbald." Said, you said you're interested in going to the railroad, work in the railroad." Oh, so I said, my boss said, "Am I all done here?" "Well, yeah, pretty well, Si." "Oh, I got a chance to go to work on the railroad." "Go ahead," he said. So I said, "Yeah, sure." This was about 7 o'clock at night. I said, "Where do I go to work?" He said, "Right here in Marengo." Oh, well, yeah, okay. When do I go to work? He said at 10 o'clock.
So you started that night?
That night, 10 o'clock that night. Didn't know the first thing about it.
But we were talking about this. You almost go 40 years on the railroad.
Well, from 48 to...
You said you figured 1986.
Yeah.
The year I was born.
Is that right?
That is.
Yeah. I'll soon be... I'll soon have as many years on pension as I did working.
No kidding.
Of course, a lot of guys accuse me of shit. How did you notice any difference from being pensioned off and working?
What did you think of working on the railroad?
Good. I loved it. I was a station agent. Worked in the... You don't know what that is. A lot of people don't know what it is.
You gotta school me.
Well, you've seen the stations,
yes,
haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Most of them were at the end of Main Street in little towns. That's what I did. You handled express and freight and Morse telegraphy. I knew my telegraphy already, My telegraphy, I knew that. And you were able to copy train orders for trains, give them messages. You sold airline tickets, you sold railway tickets, and so you did all of that, and and that's what I did for all of those years.
Any memorable thoughts on working the railroad for that many years?
Oh yeah, lots. Yeah. Well, I was out at Edson, and I worked there as just a straight telegrapher, in train orders, because everything was done by what they call train orders. These are notes that you used to hand up to trains to tell them where you're going to meet a guy, meet a train going the opposite direction.
Right.
Okay, so then I started out as a train dispatcher in Edson. I did that for a little over a year. But that was like a air traffic controller, same thing pretty well. Yeah. That was too heavy. I couldn't see running trains for the rest of my life, so I figured a station agent's job. I used to relieve station agents on their holidays,
Yeah.
Liked it. I got to know the John Doe public, meeting John Doe public. I was my own boss. I had a place to live, raise my kids in smaller places, So that's what I did. Yeah.
Pretty good life then.
It was, yeah. It was a good life. A good life. Yeah. Yeah, you're pretty well your own boss. Yeah. Yeah. See, I should repeat something for you. You got a piece of paper?
Sure.
I'll show you. Okay. Just rip a piece off. Well, okay.
Oh no, just write on the book.
Okay.
Yep,
Here's
absolutely.
Train orders. This is what you give to trains.
Okay.
As a train dispatcher, you would press and get an operator, say that was a operator, telegrapher operator at Unity and Wainwright. Okay. So you give trains. So here's a train order. Say it's 106, order number. And it's at Unity. Yeah. Okay, it's to extra. 4315 West at Unity. Period. Okay, here's the body of the order. Extra. 4315 West. Meet. Extra. 52 78 East at Winter. Name of a place. And
I know where Winter is. That is.
I was the agent at Winter for
Were you really?
7
Holy
years.
crap.
Okay. Signed and your initials. And my initials was SFC. Okay. So. Okay, now you give this to the operator at Unity. Okay, you say, all right, Unity. So the operator at Unity said he has to repeat this.
Right.
And in the meantime, you're the dispatcher and you're underlining each thing as he says them. Okay? So that there's no mistake. Okay, Unity says, order number 106, ONENEUGHTSIX at Unity WWII, period. Extra 4315. Before you are to charter be only a 5E West BST. Meet extra 5278 a 5E to the BOSCBNEIGHT East EST at Winter WINTER signed SFC. Do you know what I said?
No, I have no idea, but
All
all
right.
I could get the gist of what you're trying to say.
Order number 106 ONE 1
Yeah.
NOUGHT 0 6 SIX. Okay, extra 4315 FOUR THREE ONE FIVE West WEST meet extra. Oh, here I am down here. You've done this already, so you do it again here.
So you say the number and then you spell out
Yeah.
the number?
Meet extra 5278 a 5E to the BO SCVNEIGHT ECST at Winter WINTER signed SFC.
You're quite the wordsmith, or at least the lettersmith.
Yeah, you give those. Yeah, and as being the dispatcher, you go like as each guy. You give this to more than one guy, eh?
That's right.
You give one to this guy at Unity and this guy here at Wainwright, say.
And you're making sure trains don't run into each other.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's what you used to do.
You
So
still got it.
same as an operator, yeah.
All right, we took a quick little break so that Si can decide if I'm tiring him out or not. I got a bunch of questions that people had asked me to ask you.
All right.
But there's different. I guess I wanted to go over the 94 years you've been going, almost 95.
Mm-hmm.
What is the one thing that sticks out that's happened in the world that when you look back, you just go, "Oh yeah, that was pretty cool," or "That was huge," or it can be like TV. It can the invention of the TV. It can be flying somewhere for the first time. It can be a person, an event.
I think maybe the thing that I thought was absolutely fabulous is when they put a man on the moon.
Yeah. 1969.
Yeah. I think that was one of the main things that I thought was absolutely fabulous. Really. I've had other things happen, but nothing compared to that, really. Really. Yeah.
I had another person ask, what's your favorite decade?
Decade?
Yes.
Well, I guess the one would be in the 40s.
The 40s was your favorite decade?
I guess so. Yeah. There was more inventions made during the war, and it was the most exciting time that I had in those 2 years I was in the service. Well, I went on the railroad. I went on the railroad. That was quite exciting when I first did, and to be a train dispatcher was exciting. And to have your first agency that's your own place,
Yeah. Yeah.
and married there in the first 50s, in 1951. Married for the first time, but went with Audrey for a few years in there. Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
That was
Those
cool.
10 years.
Yeah. I had a question from Dean Amidred. He said, Si, you were born in the 20s, survived the Great Depression, went through World War II. Some of the greatest global changes have occurred in your lifetime. What do you think was the glue that kept the fabric together back then?
Oh, boy. That's a tough question. I don't know how you'd answer that. Like in what way, you mean? You mean that kept the world going?
Yeah, or maybe kept people pushing the right direction. Because, I mean, there was, for a lot of people, their sons and daughters and husbands, wives, children, you name it, were gone fighting in wars. I don't think the economy by any stretch of the imagination was booming.
Well, when you went from the Depression when 5 cents was worth $5, and all of a sudden you went from there where nobody had a job into the war, where all of a sudden everybody's got a job. And all of a sudden you went from earning nothing. Like my brother worked for $5 a month for a farmer, in the 30s.
How much?
$5 a month.
A month?
Yeah, and the government gave the farmer $5 just to take him, so he'd have something to do. My brother, but the farmer didn't have to give his $5. So my brother worked for an old German fellow down in Zealandia there. He worked for $5 a month, and there's no feed. They fed green Russian thistle to cattle.
Holy moly.
And my brother said, you went into the barn with rubber boots, not just a pair of low. Yeah. And he said, and you didn't walk around, half in a dream, because when a cow lifted her tail, you better start heading for the other side of the barn. But so he worked for $5 a month. It bought you a few packages of Vogue tobacco at 10 cents a pack, and 5 cents for a roll of papers, like Vogue papers for rolling smokes.
Yeah, for rolling smokes.
Yeah. So you went to a dance. It cost you, yeah. Well, I remember when I was in the Air Force, we were in Winnipeg. We went up to the dance hall in Grand Beach on a weekend, and they had jitney dances, they called them. Every dance you had, you paid 5 cents each. So you had to have $1 or $2 when you went, because you'd just go ask a girl, or if maybe you would go with a girl from Winnipeg, and so it cost you 10 cents a dance. Yeah. So yeah, that was something. But then, of course, then you went into the war, and everybody had a job. Yeah, some of them didn't pay that well, like in farm labor. But all of a sudden, the price of grain went from, like, there was some years that well, for an instant, show you how bad it was, that a guy used to ship your cattle, a carload of cattle, to Winnipeg to the auction market. You'd have to go all that way to sell your cattle, okay, or else you had a buyer come around, would buy your cattle. But if you had enough cattle, you could ship a whole car. One fellow, they said they shipped a carload of cattle to Winnipeg, and you rode in the caboose down there on the freight. And they got into Winnipeg and they sold, and he didn't have enough money left to pay the freight. They were worth nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, worth nothing. Yeah. So there were those times, but that, of course, was in the 30s. But then, of course, the war years came along. Well, then all of a sudden everything was worth something. And you went from, as I say, a depression to, well, as I say, like there was more inventions done in those 5 years
yeah.
that you just can't believe how it could be.
I had the next question I'm staring at is Ken Rutherford had asked, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things to focus on in life that you would suggest?
Well, the number one thing is to be happy when you go to work. And I told my kids that I don't care what you do in life. I've told my kids, I don't care if you have a pick and shovel. If you're happy, if that's what you like, then be happy when you go to work in the morning. I said, I can't believe you're not on this earth very long, really. When I think back of, it doesn't seem like it's pretty near a century, since I was born. It just, you're not on this old world very long. So I can't imagine going to work every morning. Like, I can't imagine working in an auto factory and putting that same damn bolt in day after day after day and putting the nut on it. Can you imagine that? Oh, yeah. That's one thing. Money is not everything, is the other thing. Money won't buy you happiness. And the other thing is be able to laugh at yourself. There's nobody that's perfect. And I feel sorry for the person that can't laugh or laugh at himself. So those are the 3 things I think are one of the main things in life. To go through life being happy
That's really good.
and laugh. Yeah.
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 That's really cool. That was a good question from Mr. Ken. I shouldn't be surprised he pulls one off. He's a guy who looks at the life with those, I would say, those things.
Mhm.
He's a very
Yeah.
happy guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. If you could go back to your 30-year-old self, what would you tell the younger you?
Oh, crap. Well, I'd probably tell him that same thing.
Yeah?
Like, yeah, for God's sake, whatever you do, be glad. Be glad that you're alive. Yeah. I said, I do that old thing in the morning. I tell people, I look in the mirror, that ugly old bugger, and I say to him, nice to see you, Si. Yeah, it's nice to be alive.
My father asks, over a lifetime of memory, what sticks out in your life? What have you done or experienced that sticks out to you?
That sticks out?
You talked about them putting a man on the moon, but what have you done in your lifetime that sticks out to you?
I don't know. I've been satisfied with my life. I guess I probably could have made a better life. I guess one of the things that I think that I should have done in my life was be better with my kids. That I was not a great person around children, you know, and maybe that was because I was and I did hear that a lot of guys had that problem after being in the service and have a guy barking on your butt, you know, to do something. You had a little bit of a tendency to be too strict with your children. And I'm not the only one. Like, I wasn't real bad, but I thought at times when, you know, that was immaterial. Just if you chewed their butt out, you know, for doing something that really was immaterial to life, you know. That's one of the things that I think. I've always thought that there's one thing that I was always sorry that I didn't get a chance to thank my grandmother for raising me, you know, and she was gone when I was overseas. Like, she'd been passed away for over a month before I knew it, you know. And boy, that really shook me up. Yeah. I can remember I was sitting in my Quonset there all by myself one day, and that's when I'd heard that day that my grandmother had passed away. And and that's when I got homesick. Oh, and I'll tell you, anybody that says they've never been homesick are lucky, because boy, I'll tell you, you can bawl like a baby. And I was 20 years old, and that's a tough situation to be homesick. Yeah, and kids go through that early. Yeah, but I was 20 years old and I just got a letter that saying my grandmother had passed away, and I thought, oops, yeah. And I've thought of that lots of times, you know. Yeah. Of course, when you're 18 years old, that you don't think along that line. You're thinking way above something like that.
What was the first vehicle you ever owned?
Oh, a 1946 Chev.
What color?
Green.
A green.
Yeah.
Did you buy it brand new?
No. Hell no. We were married. I lived in winter, for God's sake. I couldn't afford one, for corn's sake. Yeah. I was playing baseball with Neilberg from winter, and Audrey had to stay home with the little one. Well, said if we had a car, then maybe I could go. Oh yeah, sure. We went to Turtleford after we got the car, and oh God, was it hot. And of course no air conditioning. And she had a tendency to be car sick, and so did my oldest girl. It was just a baby. And going up through the river and up in those hills, and they both got car sick. And then they sat in the car all day in that heat. So that I didn't last long playing baseball after that. It was, yeah, I didn't laugh about that, I'll tell you. Yeah, you'd probably had a divorce on the road right quick. Yeah.
Speaking of sports, as I'm a sports guy, what sports did you play growing up?
Well, I played hockey when I was in high school, and ball. Played softball for the team from around Zealandia. We had a good team. We used to play. Us guys that were in high school played senior hockey against seniors, and we played all around there. Yeah. Other than that, I never. Then I, as I say, took up golf, and that's it. Yeah.
When you were playing hockey, for the hockey lover in me, was it out on an outdoor rink, or did you guys have...
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Zealandia down there. We played outside, like those other little towns, like Milden and Sovereign and Harris and let me see. Delisle. No, God, I think it was Tessier. One of those up there between Rosetown. They had another one had a indoor rink. Laura, it was, yeah, had an indoor rink. But Rosetown, of course, had an indoor rink. But all of those other little places, they played outside, yeah.
Shovel the rink yourself and everything else.
Yeah, well, that is usually done for, yeah.
How about your golf? The boys would probably take me out back if I didn't mention that you got a hole-in-one last year.
Yeah.
And I heard that might be the second one you've had in your lifetime.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I got one on the other hole, number 6, one time, and
what course is this, Si?
Out here. Both.
At Unity, both at Unity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I've never seen either one of them go in the hole. I reached down to pick up my tee when the guys all started hollering like Rick Blanchett and Twid them. It's in. You got a hole in one. Yeah, crap! I didn't even see it going. I couldn't see that far.
Guys play their entire life and never hit a hole in one.
Yeah.
And you do it at 93. That's pretty friggin' cool.
Yeah, it's luck. Well, I'd had the other one.
Don't tell them that. That's skill. I got one last year. It's all skill, Si.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I can imagine what they'd say, too. The other one was down on number 6. I did that one. And, they had and the same thing was there. They hit the ball and they had closest to the hole, they had a hunk of cardboard on a stick. And it was right in front of the hole. Well, I hit the ball and I hit it a bit left, and it hits the green and it's rolling towards the hole, And I thought, oh well, so it'll probably roll right off. Oh, I reached down to pick up my tea, and yeah, it's in. The guy's over in the other tea office. Hey, you lucky son of a gun, Campbell. It's in the hole. Yeah, it was.
I had one in from Morgan Mann. I interviewed him and his brother 2 weeks ago, I guess now. And he asked, are we evolving as a people or are we going the other way?
Oh, hell. We must be going up because we keep inventing stuff that's, there's... I can remember my grandmother saying, and we've said the whole thing, as you go down through life, yeah, I don't know what this world's coming to. Yeah, I don't know what those kids are thinking. Yeah, you still say the same thing as my grandmother said. Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that thing.
With the phone, with technology, you're talking.
Not only that, but what it's going to do to John Doe public, like our kids. Like it was showing on TV when they're talking about cell phones, and it shows a guy he's walking along and he's walking along and he, boing, and you could hear the steel post, and he just hit that with his forehead, and you could hear it go boing, and he backed up and moved over and walked on down the street. Look, holy!
You'd think that'd smarten them up.
You would think so. Yeah, God. But I think that's taken away from our kids. They can't add 2 and 2 and get 4. And I think it's going to ruin them with a conversation with somebody else. You go in to pay for something, and forget it as far as giving them the extra change. With most of it now.
Now it's all this tap and card and no money at all.
No. Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. No. So you just don't bother. You give them $10 and it tells them what change to give you.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to affect us down the road. Christ. Right now, can you imagine what it'd be like if we had a... Can you imagine what it would be like, say for instance, west of Winnipeg, if we had a major power failure, or if somebody shot down our deal up there,
our satellites.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd
come to a stop.
Yeah, we absolutely.
Yeah, if a war happened, and they shot up and knocked out some of those things, well, we'd come to a standstill in Western Canada, and especially you take about 3 bombs in Winnipeg, and you knock the railways out, and you got Western Canada stuck. It's that's getting a little morbid. Yeah, somebody's
What do you think of, so a big thing right now is it used to be global warming, and now it's climate change.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't really know about that. I don't know. If maybe it's happened over centuries before us, I don't know. It'd have to be a long time ago if it was. But whether we have something to do with the global warming, I don't know.
How about a different one? When I first get to vote, when you're young and you're 18, you get to vote. You don't understand what's going on. Heck, even at 33, I still some days don't understand what's going on. You've had a lot of prime ministers, specifically in Canada, go through. This current one, Trudeau, for the West at least, has done a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, over your lifetime, have you seen, does this feel like this upcoming election is as big as what I personally think it is? Or have you seen this time and time again over the centuries?
No, I think this one is... well, I think he listened to his old man, old Elliot Trudeau. He said, don't worry about it. Yeah, the money. Yeah, you go into debt, yeah, it'll straighten itself out. And he's got to be thinking the same thing, because look at the amount of money. Every time he turns around, he's giving away millions and millions and millions of dollars. Can you imagine giving Loblaws, what, $1.4 million to buy a new things for their store? Where you put stuff in the deep freezes.
Yeah.
Loblaws.
Yeah.
$1.4 million bucks.
The answer to you is no, I can't imagine doing that.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
So
in your mind, then, this is as pivotal as what I think it is, this coming election.
Yeah. Yes. God almighty. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars we're in the hole now that he's give. Just the amount of money that he's give away. It's maybe his old man Pierre, maybe he had it right. Because I guess you look throughout the world and you look at most countries, they're all in the hole. So maybe it doesn't make any difference. Maybe it's only figurative speech. I don't know.
Okay, so 4 left. Kelly O'Donnell asked, if Sask people from the Great Depression could give us advice, what would it be?
Boy, you're really picking my brain.
Hey, I told you I was going to make you think today.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. I remember and worked in Edson. I would start up the street. That's when we were first married. I was making payments. Used to, when you got your pay every 2 weeks, you went and paid the grocery bill, and then every month you paid off all your others, paying for your furniture and all of this and that. And sometimes I'd get home after paying off all the bills, and I'd have $1. If I had $10 left for 2 weeks, wow, we'd go to a show, we'd go bowling or something. And sometimes I'd have $1 left to do for 2 weeks. Because you could go and you could charge the other cigarettes or something. If I was smoking, I could charge them down at the grocery store. Then all of a sudden they decided, oh, you got to pay cash. We damn near starved for 2 weeks. Well, okay, then it's amazing when you look around the country and you see houses worth $500,000 and big motorhome sitting there, or a fifth wheel, and a truck with dualies on it to pull it, and a couple of skidoos and a CB, they called it, for zipping around the water. Oh, I think I wonder if that's the way to go, because I never could afford that. Well, they're working for wages too. They must be a hell of a lot better manager than I ever was. But maybe it's the way to go. They're having all that fun when they're young, when you should be having fun, where no, we really didn't. Well, we had fun, when we first married. We had fun, but we didn't have any money to to spend to have the fun with. But we had fun, Now, hell, we got the money. We're too goddamn old to know how to spend. So does that tell you anything?
I'm sure the listeners will take from it what they want.
Yeah, live it the way you want it.
What was the first motion picture you ever saw? Movie?
Yeah. Oh, I saw Charlie Chaplin in a non-talkie.
In
Rosetown, and our teacher, when I first started to school, in 1929, our teacher took 14 of us kids to the show in Rosetown.
No kidding.
The neighbor guy come over with that same old truck that they all went to the lake with.
Yeah.
You remember I was saying on July the 1st? Okay. He took us all to Rosetown, and we went to the show. And that cost her 10 or 15 cents each. But and it was Charlie Chaplin in a non-talkie.
And what did you think of that?
Oh, fabulous. Oh, God, if I could see... He's due to come on back on here, I figured, in a week or so. And if I can, I'll probably watch it. He was absolutely terrific, old Charlie Chaplin.
Who was your favorite musician? Or band?
Oh. Well, you know what? The ones I used to really enjoy listening to was Don Messer and his Islanders.
I tell you what, I'm going to have to Google them. I'm going to have to look them up.
Yeah. Don Messer and his Islanders.
What would be the song from them? Or just everything in general?
Oh, everything in general. Yeah. Yeah, he had an orchestra. He played all of that old country music, well, I'm a country guy. I like country music. I find country music is each song pretty well has a story to tell. Like, get Google here and play country music. Yeah, that's what Don Messer did. And they were around for years, yeah.
Sticking with culture, what was one book you'd recommend to read if you're going to read one book?
Oh. I don't know, really. Oh, that I really got a kick out of, that it was as though I was right there, and that's James Herriot.
James Herriot?
James Herriot was a veterinarian, and he was at Harrogate, just down the road from Middleton St. George, where I was it was on the squadron over in Yorkshire, England. Our number 6 group was RCIF. There was all those squadrons. The only place they had left to put us, the Canadians said, we would like our own squadrons. We're flying with the RAF and we don't get a credit for anything, and we didn't. Well, when my brother, he flew with the RAF, Royal Air Force. Well, we were just we were classed as those guys from the colonies,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what we were.
And
So we moved up. They moved us up into Yorkshire. It was and where the fog and the rain, and that's why we were diverted to other airfields quite often coming back because we were fogged in. But James Harriet was a veterinarian just down the road at Harrogate, and the first time I picked up a small book was Harrogate, James Harriet. Wow. So I started reading. To read the book is all short stories.
Okay.
And you would swear you're right there. You know, like for instance, he's telling about, he's out in Yorkshire, and oh God, the farmers there, you know, dirt poor. And the fence lines were poles that were like this, you know, or else all rock, you know. And he was out there, and the cow was trying to have a calf. And so they got her down, and so he's laying it on her head, holding her down. And he said, they don't know, he said to the old farmer, he said, they don't know, he said, I got her down, he said, you pull the calf. And the old farmer said, lad, I cannot pull the calf. He said, well, get Alec there, you hired man. And Alec was a little short. Alec, the little cuss, he couldn't pull the skin off a custard. But yeah, James Harriet, if you get a chance to read the best of James Harriet, you'll laugh, because, and there's nice things like you could go to bed at night and take the book and you can read a whole story.
I'll have to take a look into that.
Yeah.
All right, I know I said 4. Now I'm probably past that, and everybody's
right.
probably laughing at me. I got 2 more. I got to get to one more by Kelly O'Donnell. He said, if SAS people from the great... Oh, no, not at SAS people. I'm reading the same one. What have been the biggest impact on rural Saskatchewan? Electricity or going from horses to a tractor and car? What do you think was the bigger change?
Oh, power.
Power?
Power in rural Saskatchewan.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. Tractor, definitely, too. But not all guys could get a tractor right off the bat, you know. But power came in to rural Saskatchewan. I remember I was out of winter in 1954 when the power came in. $700 got you power. You sign up for it right away. Because we had an old guy there. He always had it in for winter. And he knew that the power was going to have to come through his property. And if he didn't take it, you had to have so many on the line, you know, or they wouldn't put it in. Well, he was very close to it, and he figured if he stopped him from going on his property, then winter wouldn't get the power. Well, anyway, it went along, and everybody in winter threw in $700, and we got the power. And it went right past his barn, you know. Well, then he decided, if I can't stop him, I guess I might as well get it. Well, they said, oh no, you're not going to get it at $700. It's going to cost you $2,100. Or something to that effect. And the laugh was on him. But I can remember that. Oh, so when the power came in, you'd drive through the country at night. And of course, everybody had every light on that they could. They had, you know, all the main lights out in the, you know, on your pole, yard lights, you know. They'd all be on, and yet the lights would be all over. Yeah.
Must have been quite a sight.
It was. It was really something. Yeah, because Audrey and I would drive down to Alsace, you know, and late at night always when you're going there, you know, pretty well, and there was lights in the whole country, and especially at harvest time, you know, the combine lights on and everything. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, a final one, a fun one I like to do with all my guests, is if you had a time machine and you could go to sit front row at any event, where would you go? Which event in history?
You mean a sport? Anything you mean?
Anything. You take me wherever you want to go, Si.
Oh, well, I've been there before, but I'd go back down and watch a Blue Jay game, and we might do that this summer.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would you go to the one where they win?
Oh, it don't matter. Okay.
Well, I think that if you had a time machine, you could go to a Blue Jays game. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
So you might as well go and see the one where they win it.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, how the hell do you know if you're gonna win or not?
Well, that's the lovely thing about a time machine. You can go to the exact
Oh, a time
day.
machine. Yeah, I suppose, eh? Never
Yeah.
thought of that.
Yeah, time machine. Go to wherever you want. You go to a Blue Jays game. Because that's what I mean. You can go as far back in history as you want. You can go wherever you want.
No, that's not right. I always wanted to go to Vimy, and I have no idea why I didn't go. My son just went to Vimy, and I couldn't believe it when he said he was going to go to Vimy. Because he never seemed like he was interested in anything as far as me being in the service at all. And he said to me, "Do you want to go to Vimy?" "Yeah, I'd like to go to Vimy, but I don't think I could if I was going myself, but Irene has trouble walking. She don't like to admit it, and there's quite a bit of walking if you go to Vimy. So I haven't. If I had that thing, I would go to Vimy, and I'd go back over to my brother's grave. My brother's buried in Harlingen. It's up in northern Holland. He was shot down there by a night fighter over the island of Texel. And it's amazing how the Dutch people knew what the hell was going on at night. They knew that my brother had been shot down over there. He was the only one, his body was the only one and it washed across the Zuiderzee. About 10 days later, they picked up my brother's body on the shore. And, you know what kind of shape he'd be in, And he's buried in the little soldier's plot like we have out here at the cemetery, in the municipal cemetery at Harlingen. H-A-A-R. They have a way of saying that double A like, but H-A-A-R-L-I-N-G-E-N, Harlingen. And Audrey and I went over and stayed with host families over there. We were able to go because the Legion, the War Graves Commission, and the Dutch people made it monetarily available to Canadians who they give credit for their freedom. We went up there. He took us up, drove us up to Harlingen, and we met the people that look after my brother's grave. We met them, we took them out for brunch. And they assured us that my brother's grave would be looked after by their families down through the years. And there's not a blade of grass out of place in that. On my brother's grave, or all of them that are in there. There's quite a few in it. But it's amazing how we walked in and we didn't know where it was, so thought maybe we'd find the guy that was looking after the place. They usually have a guy like we do here in the summertime. And there was a little short Dutchman, and finally cornered him way over there and was able to converse enough. Canada, he said. Yeah. And he said, I thought so by your voice. I said, my brother, Donald Edward, yeah, come. So he takes me over. He said, it's down that road there. Yeah, and so I took his picture. And in those days, they used to be able to, when you sent the film in to get it developed, it would come back about this big. But on the side was another small picture, just a little one, the same picture. So my brother was going over to see, his son was over at Lahr, Germany, in the Air Force. And this is my brother, the other brother, you know. And so he was going up there. So I said, here, I get this picture. This is about 5 years later. Take this picture and see if this little guy is still working there. My brother went in and he found him, and he walks over and he said, he showed him this picture, his picture.
Yeah.
He said, Campbell from Canada. That's how much they think of Canadians.
Yeah.
Like, he could have just forgot that, you know. If that had been American, he wouldn't even have talked to you, you know. But, and my sister went over another, well, it's only about 3 years later, and same thing, yeah. He knew she was my brother's sister, yeah. Amazing.
Well,
Okay.
I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I could probably keep you here until 8 o'clock at night, but
Yeah.
I got to get you fed here at some time.
Yeah. Well, that's really something. That really choked me up to go and see my brother's grave. Yeah. We were closer together than my older brother. Yeah, he was away working, you know, before. My brother Don, he had I don't know what color hair. It's brown, and yet it's like a burgundy, you know, you might call it. But had a temper, he had freckles, loved fight. In fact, the last time my brother, they got together over there, before I got over there, they'd been into town, and they got on 2 buses coming home in this RAF airdrome. And his brother didn't come, and he seen him in bed the next morning. That's the last he seen him, and his eyes were black, and he had the hell beat out of him. Yeah, he got fooled around. He took about 5 guys on, and he said to Fred, "Yeah, well, I took 3 of them down." That's the last my brother saw him. He took 3 of them down. Jesus. Yeah, Fred said, "Oh, he's in bad shape." Yeah. But those people, yeah, that was really something to take care of my brother's grave. Yeah. I'd like to go to Vimy. I have a feeling I'd take my other son from Airdrie, and just the 2 of us go, you know. Irene would probably leave me, but yep. That's it.
Thanks again, Si.
Okay.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed Si. I just want to thank Si for coming on. That was for him to talk about World War II and open up like that. It's you just don't get conversation like that. Well, maybe never in a lifetime nowadays. But I really appreciate Si coming in and some stories and how things were back then. Next week, I have Jackson Kaluski and Bryce Kindop. Bryce plays for the Everett Silvertips, and Jackson plays for the Seattle Thunderbirds. They're going to talk about growing up in the city of Lloyd. They were on the same team that went to the TELUS Cup in Midget AAA, and then what it took to get to the Western Hockey League, what they do in the off season, their training, and just some other cool stuff about 2 young kids playing hockey still. So tune in next week. We'll see you then.